to be here with you this morning, to get to know St. Matthew's as a community of people who are learning how to follow Jesus, in particular this morning to confirm 3 people and to receive 1 person into the Anglican Communion. I also understand that I am joining you in a time of grief for your community, mourning and celebrating the life of Barb. And so it is in that age-old mixture of pain and joy, death and new life, that I am with you here today as your new bishop. And a bishop is an ancient role. It's existed in the church almost as long as people have been learning how to follow Jesus. And my job is to help Christian communities stay on track, focused on loving God and loving their neighbors. So I'm partly a coach, here to encourage and direct. I'm partly a quality control inspector, Stephen, okay? Partly a quality control inspector, and partly a cheerleader. And I've been looking forward to this opportunity to get to know you a little better. I express my gratitude for the leadership of Stephen and for so many of you, and to look forward with hope to the future. A few weeks ago, I read an article about deep sea diving. This is what the article said. En route to the floor of the ocean, the diver first passes through a wide bank of light reflected from the surface of the sea. From this area, the diver moves to a depth that cannot be penetrated by light from the surface. It is dark, foreboding, and eerie. The diver's immediate reaction is one of fear, and sometimes a sudden spasm of panic will overtake a diver. As he drops deeper and deeper into the abyss, slowly his eyes begin to pick up the luminous quality of the darkness. What fear there was relaxes as he moves into the lowest regions with a new confidence and peculiar vision. Darkness can be illuminating. Seeing, not seeing, sight, blindness, they're all mentioned 24 times in our 41 verses in the reading that Stephen just read for us. And just when you think you might have a handle on what it means to follow Jesus, you hear a passage like this one today where Jesus says black is white and darkness leads to light. In an age where we have to see it to believe it, goodness is associated with light and evil wedded to darkness, Jesus urging us to see our own spiritual blindness as the pathway to life and hope, it's a bit of a tough sell. On this Confirmation Sunday, all are welcome, whether you're new and spiritually searching. Maybe you're asking questions and you're bringing your doubts. Or maybe you're a longtime member of St. Matthew's and you've been on the path of discipleship for years. Yet this passage, full of interactions where you don't know whether to laugh or cry or faceplant, gives the opportunity to examine what it might mean to be spiritually blind and how it can lead us to be the people that I think we long to be. In confirmation, we're given the opportunity to confirm the promises our parents made for us years ago at our baptism, to say yes to our deep need for God and the light and life that only God can bring. And before I forget, where are the parents of the confirmation candidates? Raise up your hands. If you're a mom or a dad or an aunt or an uncle, way to go. 10 out of 10 for making the spiritual nurture of your children a priority. I'm serious. I have 3 teenagers. There is no greater gift that you can give your children than faith in Jesus Christ. And in the coming teen years, you will continue to set the tone by making it a countercultural priority in your home to love God and love your neighbors. And it will make you different. So let's just dig into this passage a little bit together. You might want to have it open with you and see what hope and life there is for us. And the story seems to be divided into 4 moments of blindness. Moment number 1. As he passed by, Jesus, he saw a man blind from birth. And the disciples asked a question that was common in Jesus' day. Jesus, who sinned? This blind man or his parents? Because somebody must have sinned to cause him to be blind from birth. We ask the same question today. It goes like this. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why are some babies born with birth defects? And how did Donald Trump become president? It's an age-old question and no easy answer. But Jesus replied this way, neither did this man sin nor his parents, but that the works of God might be revealed in him. And that is not to say that God caused it, but it is to say that God can use the tragic circumstances of our lives to strengthen us and equip us to serve others. My mother has suffered from very serious depression on and off throughout her life. And while it has certainly brought suffering to our family, it has also strengthened me in my pastoral ministry and made me more sensitive. The man's blindness gave Jesus the opportunity to demonstrate the power of God, but the disciples couldn't see the potential. All they could see was the obvious. The poor beggar, blind from birth. They couldn't see. Moment number 2. Jesus then spits on the ground, makes a mud paste, and puts it on the man's eyes. Then he told him to go wash in a pool of water. Just like that, he could see. It was a miracle. And this set the stage for the second group, the man's longtime friends. The gospel writer John writes this. The neighbors and those who saw that he was blind before said, isn't this he who sat and begged? Still others said, well, it looks like him. Don't laugh. It's hard to know what to think when someone you've known a long time has a deeply transformative experience. I find it hard enough when my husband's barber cuts his hair too short, right? Let alone someone close to me completely changing their experience, their appearance, or making a radical career change. The friends and neighbors literally couldn't believe their eyes. They were stuck in the past, when the man was blind and knew his place. They couldn't see. Moment number 3. The neighbors then send for the religious experts, people like me, people like Stephen, who were supposed to understand such mysterious miracles. You know where the story's going, right? The Pharisees, the religious experts, questioned the man, and he told them the same thing he told everyone else. Jesus put mud on my eyes, I washed my eyes, and I could see. Simple as that. But of course, things can never be that simple. They questioned this, they questioned that, with nothing he said fitting their preconceived notions. And then it slipped out that the miracle had been performed on the Sabbath. Whoops. You weren't supposed to do any work on the Sabbath, and that included healing, not even kneading, which is what Jesus had done with the mud to make the paste. And so they seized on this technicality and tried to force the blind man to denounce Jesus as a sinner. But he wouldn't budge. His testimony is eloquent in its simplicity. I don't know if he's a sinner. One thing I do know, I was blind. Now I see. The Pharisees were trapped. In their mind, the law on keeping the Sabbath was black and white, and they were blind to the fact that God's grace, God's mercy, is unrelenting, unconfined. They couldn't see. And moment number 4. The Pharisees couldn't figure it out, so they summoned the man's parents. And his bewildered parents are almost comical in their answer to the question of what's going on. We know this is our son, that much they can see, and that he was born blind. We can confirm this fact. But how he now sees, we don't know. Beats us. Or who opened his eyes, we don't know. He's of age. Ask him. He'll speak for himself. You would have thought that his parents would have come to their son's defense, or maybe even been excited. But instead, it looks like they're passing the buck while nervously looking at the ground. Why? Well, this is what John writes. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for it had already been agreed that if anyone would confess Jesus as Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Now, to be kicked out of the synagogue back then was serious business. And so you could say that the man's parents were blind in some sense by choice. They decided to put on blinders rather than be honest about the power of God that they'd seen with their own eyes. They were paralyzed by fear. They couldn't see. 4 moments, 4 groups, all spiritually blind. The disciples were stuck on that sort of mundane, everyday level, unable to see beyond the horizon. The friends and the neighbors were stuck in the past, unable to see the transforming power of God at work in front of them. And the religious experts were stuck inside a lifeless reading of God's law. And lastly, the parents were silenced by fear. I've been blind in every one of those ways, and so have you. Regardless of where you are in your spiritual journey. And the good news today is there's absolutely no shame in being blind. Jesus only has words of condemnation this morning for those who claimed to be able to see, who claimed to have it all figured out. Deciding to be confirmed or received into the Anglican Communion is not saying that you've memorized the whole Bible, you've got it all figured out, have no questions, no doubts. No. But it is saying something. I remember when my husband Tim proposed to me almost 25 years ago, and I could have said one of a number of things. I could have said, "No way, are you kidding me? My mother will kill me," right? Is that? 2, I could have said, "Well, maybe. Look, I'll put your name in the hat and I'll let you know when the draw is," okay? I could have said that. Or I said what I obviously said. One little word, yes. Which was a little word that, of course, changed everything. Did I like everything about Tim when I said yes? No. Did I know everything about Tim when I said yes? No. You know, if I knew now what I knew then, right? I didn't like everything. I didn't even know everything. But I did know enough. I knew enough to decide that he was who I wanted to go on the journey with, asking questions with, wrestling with the doubts with, my partner in the dark, groping for the light. Being confirmed is saying, I don't understand everything. I don't even necessarily agree with everything, but I do know this. I know who Jesus is and what he has done for me on the cross, and I want to follow him. I want to go to him to ask the questions. I want to bring my doubts to him, and I want to grope through the darkness of life following him, because we all follow somebody. The issue is, who's it going to be? And if it's not Jesus, you're following somebody else. The good news this morning is that there's no shame in being blind. In fact, being aware of one's blindness, coming to God with humility, coming to God with doubts and questions, seems to be a prerequisite to becoming who God intends us to be. And I think St. Matthew's is the kind of place that you can come. You can come and talk to Stephen and other people about the doubts and the questions that you have. And that's a really good thing. Because you see, the heart of the Christian message begins with our acknowledgement of our blindness. The heart of the Christian message is summed up in two little statements. And if you take anything away from today, this is what I want you to take away, these two little statements. Statement one, we're far worse off than we think we are. And statement two, we are far more loved than we ever dared dream. How might that lead us to that kind of people that we want to be? We're far worse off than we think we are. This is that spiritual blindness. And left to our own devices, we're not going to be able to figure out who God is or live lives the way that brings us and others joy and contentment. All observable evidence throughout history, and from 1 week, if you were to observe my life, would prove my point. Left to my own devices, I am blind, groping in the dark for meaning, purpose, and identity. I am far worse off than I care to admit. Jesus had to die for me. And because my natural state is spiritual blindness, I tend to cling to things for ultimate meaning and purpose and security that will always let me down. I'm fortunate with my family. I'm kind of enjoying this new gig as a bishop. I'm lucky with my health. But you know what? At some point in time, every single one of those will let me down. All of them. I am far worse off than I care to admit. The wonderful thing about that critical first half of understanding the Christian message is that it makes you humble. It prevents you from judging others. And it puts boundaries on any arrogance or pride that might grow in your heart. And the second half, that we are far more loved than we ever dared dream, Jesus was glad to die for me. Jesus had to die for me, but he was glad to die for me. And knowing that I'm delighted in by the creator of the universe. I tell our teenage daughters all the time, God made you and God doesn't make trash. Knowing that we're delighted in by God, that God's love was poured out for us in the death and resurrection of Jesus can make us marvelously confident. We can be so confident in a love that will never leave us, never forsake us. A love that surrounds us on every side and will go before us all the days of our life. And this is the wonderful combination that can be found in people who are followers of Jesus. People who've acknowledged their spiritual blindness and they've reached out for the grace of God. Humility and confidence. Confidence and humility. Many of us are the exact opposite. We're a mixture of arrogance and anxiety. Yet followers of Jesus are people who are growing in humility and confidence. These are the character traits, humility and confidence, that you can count on continuing to grow and shape you and the people of St. Matthew's as you journey forward. As you journey forward as new confirmands, as you journey forward as the people of St. Matthew's, cling to Jesus. Acknowledge your need for him, and you will grow in humility. Marvel at his great love for you, and you will grow in confidence. Thanks be to God. Amen.